Hi, my name is Ella Piskorski. I'm the current president of Acre Student Farm. This is our fourth episode in our currently 5-episode video series on plants you can grow in Laramie. And this week we'll be talking about pumpkins. And to recap our video series, each week we're posting a video about a plant you can grow in Laramie and some stuff you can do with them. And this week we're doing pumpkins, and next week will be our final one for now. It'll be lettuce. And then after that, we'll have a couple more videos, at least one on canning and then one on straw bale gardening. We'll see what else we may do. So summary of the week, description of pumpkins, how to grow them and some tips for Laramie, how to store them and preserve them, how to use them, and a little really easy quick recipe of just simple baked pumpkin. So description, usually a spherical squash over here. These are just random winter squashes. Pumpkins are usually orange, but you could have a bunch of different colors. I have some seeds of one that are supposed to be blue, which I think are really exciting. They're sweet after cooking, as anyone who has had pumpkin pie would know. They're an annual, and they're classified as a winter squash. So growing them in Laramie, beginning, you're going to sow the seeds in May or so. We transplant them at Acres. We sow the seeds. Yeah, I would say probably early May. You don't want them too big as a thing when you transplant them because they may get shocked and they'll just die. You need to make sure you don't do them too early because last year what happened was we transplanted our pumpkins in, I think it was mid-June because it had been really nice for a couple of weeks. And then literally like 2 days after we had transplanted it, it froze overnight and they all died, except actually it turns out they didn't die. They actually came back, which was, I guess, good, but they were obviously setbacks since they had to start from scratch all over again. But yeah, just making sure you don't plant too early. They're not frost hardy enough, or at least the variety we were using wasn't frost hardy enough to keep them alive during that period of time. Like everything else in Laramie, you should use early varieties if possible. So we just use a normal sugar pumpkin type variety. I don't remember what kind of variety it is. I don't have the seeds with me, but if you can find an early variety, it's always helpful in Laramie. Like everything else, you're gonna have to amend the soil since the pH is so high and everything's so minerally here. You need to irrigate them like everything else again. And so a few tips for getting your pumpkins a bit earlier is you can trim the leaves so they don't shade the pumpkins because according to Jordan Pearson, former president, this is my source, the sun is what makes them turn orange. So if they're shaded, they'll take longer to get orange. So like here in this picture, you could probably trim like those 2 top leaves above this one pumpkin in the foreground so that it would turn orange a little faster. But obviously it's orange, so that one doesn't matter. But theoretically, if it was green. Also turning the pumpkins occasionally. You'll notice if you buy one from the store, there'll be like a patch that's like brown or maybe green, depending. So if you turn it, you can theoretically get rid of that little brown patch. This will also help get it, if it's still green, it'll help get it orange a bit faster. So what you'll do is you'll harvest them once the vines have dried and it's not too cold out, because you want a little bit of a frost, but you don't want like a super hard frost before you harvest them, because otherwise they'll get squishy. So you need to make sure that at least part of it is orange. If the majority of the fruit is green but it has a little patch of orange, that's fine. You can harvest that one. But if it's entirely green, you're just gonna have to throw it away at that point, or try to wait and see if maybe you can get some more time before it gets squishy. But making sure at least a little part is orange is good, because then it will ripen if you save it. You can save the seeds from them to plant the next year, which is how you'll propagate them, or you can buy more, obviously. Another recommendation from former President Jordan Pearson is probably don't bother with carving pumpkins. You can do it. They're just not going to get super big, and you're going to have to like kind of baby them to try to get them even to medium size in our experience. So we recommend sugar pumpkins would be more beneficial here. So storing and preserving them, you can just store them in a cool, dry place. So if you have one of those mostly green pumpkins with a small bit of orange, you leave it down in like your cellar or basement for a while. Make sure they don't touch each other, one thing. So like here, they're kind of touching each other and they could get a little bit squishy where they touch each other. But so if you leave your mostly green pumpkin down there, it will eventually turn orange. So we stored our pumpkins because they were mostly green because they had that late start last year. We stored them in my cellar, and they eventually did all turn orange. And then after a few months, they had gotten squishy. We had to throw them out. We had managed to use a few of them. Actually, there's a lot more like pumpkin in there than you kind of imagine with sugar pumpkins. So we could have pureed so much pumpkin. It was ridiculous. Other ways you can store them, preserve them is you get your pumpkin, if it is already orange, you can pressure can the cubed pumpkin. Don't just try to water bath it if it isn't in like vinegar or something, because they're not acidic enough. It isn't safe. You can also make soup and then try to pressure can that, or you can freeze like chunks of it, or you can puree it and freeze it. Try to dry it. For pureeing and freezing, what you would do is so get a piece of parchment paper or oil, I suppose. I use parchment paper. Put it on a pan. Cut the pumpkin in half, and then face it down, so like flush side down and round side up. And then you're gonna bake it. I don't remember what temperature. Sorry, until a toothpick will go through it easily. That means it's ready. Then you take them out. You let them cool. You remove the skins, and you, I guess, cut it up so that you can put it in your food processor and puree it. And then you can then freeze your puree or use it immediately, as we did last fall. I think like November, December-ish, we had done that and then made little tiny pumpkin pies and other pumpkin pies that we had sold and used at bake sales, which was nice. Okay, some more about how to use them. So they're good sources of vitamins A, B, and potassium. The vitamin A you can see with that orange color, that's the vitamin A kind of. Cook it as you would any other winter squash. Obviously, it tastes a little bit different, but you can sub it if you want to. You can add smoothies or oatmeal. You can make pies and bars and lots of fun desserts. You can roast the seeds. So what I did when I had pureed all those pumpkins last year was I saved the seeds and then I roasted them afterwards. And I personally, I don't like them really, so I just gave them to my roommates. But you can do that. That's really easy. I don't even think I had a recipe. I just stuck them in the oven with some salt, if I remember correctly, or sugar. Some people do that. You can also fry up the skins. They're edible. Everything basically in the pumpkin's edible except for the stem, as I don't think anyone want to eat it anyway because it's basically wood. Also, as far as I know, like of the plant parts besides the pumpkin and the flowers, I can't imagine that stuff's edible, so I wouldn't try it unless you know it is good. Another thing is if you don't want, like if you have a bunch of plants, you're like, oh, I can't use all of these pumpkins. You can actually saute the flowers too. You can just cut them off. What Jordan Peterson does is she stuffs them with goat cheese and then she sautés them in butter. Apparently that's really good. She says you could probably also use cream cheese, but it wouldn't be as good. She really likes goat cheese. A really quick recipe here is just baking it, kind of the same way like you'd prep it for pureeing, but then just not puree it. So you just get your pumpkin. You can use some oil to put that, like coat that on it. Season it with whatever, salt, pepper, weird herbs, whatever. You bake it at 420 for 30-40 minutes until tender. Same thing how you poke that toothpick through to see if it's soft. And that concludes our episode on pumpkin. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week with lettuce.